To start today's lesson, I want you to think about the following questions. Pause the video and try and answer them. You should have answered these questions by now. A linear array is a simple 1D array, where the values are in a sequence. A linear array has square brackets as well, when we use them in Python anyway. So in Python, we don't actually have arrays, we have lists. Remember, there's a difference between lists and arrays. In Python, when we're using lists, we can append data to a list, and we can put multiple data items into a list, and multiple data types. We can't do that in an array. Remember that an array actually has only one data type, and you can't expand the size of the array, which is why we usually set the size of the array at the start. Remember that in Python, actually it works by moving the whole array, if you want to append an item to it, to a new location in memory, which then updates that array. So question 4, look at our code here. What would be the position of 22? Well, it would be 1, 2 in square brackets. And question 5, what data source is stored at 3, 4? Well, we look at for 3 and go down for it's 54. So next I want you to create a trace table. A trace table, remember, is a table that traces the values of the variables through our code. Assume x is 7 while you run this and create a trace table. Hopefully you've come up with 3 different columns: answer, count and remainder. Each of these are variables. Now we could have put x in as well if we wanted to, because this is also a variable, so you could potentially have had x in your trace table. Have a look at my answers. Is this what you got? You've now got 6 questions. Please pause this video and complete the 6 questions. So we've previously looked at the difference between mod and div. Remember, mod is modulus, and this calculates the remainder. So question 2, how is it used? Well, here it's actually dividing the value of 7 by whatever count is in the value of count, and giving that remainder. That remainder is then used in the next selection piece of code. So next question, what language is this written in? It's pseudocode. We can tell because it has an endif and a next count. Question 4 is explain what is div. And div, remember, is our quotient. It calculates a division without the remainder, so like rounding down. Question number 5, what is the purpose of this algorithm? Well, actually, it calculates if x is a prime number. Here's the answer to our flow diagram. So you can see we've started with an input value of x. In our example, this was 7. I've then initiated the variables in one process box. Answer equals true, remainder equals 0, and count equals 2. It then goes to a decision box. Is count equal to yes? Well, the first time you run this, unless you enter 2, it's always going to go to no. Remember, our x was 7 on our example. It's passed to the yellow box on the left, and it says remainder equals x mod count. If the remainder is equal to 0, we know that this is not, the answer is false, so we turn answer to false, and it's not a prime number. Otherwise, we change the value of x and keep going round, change the value of count, sorry, and keep going round until we have completed this. So now we have a programming challenge. For each of the programs we're going to look at today, you're going to be using 2D arrays. Please open Trinket and look for the task which says student marks. You've been given part of a completed Trinket called student marks. Your first thing to do will be to correct the 3 syntax errors and use comments to explain what the code does. Then I want you to adjust the code, and this is the more challenging part, so that more than one student can actually be recorded. You're going to have to use 2D lists for this, so storing students' names and marks in a way I've shown on the screen. Part 4 is to print the name of the top 3 students and the bottom 3 students based on their average scores. And then finally, print the students with the highest and lowest scores. Please make sure you're using functions and procedures for this task. Here are the syntax errors. There's a missing bracket, there's a missing array name, and there's a missing comma. Your second challenge is to go find the trinket which says scores. Try running the code and use comments to explain what the code does and what each block of code does really. Now there is a logical error in the code. You're going to have to try the code to try and find the logical error. See if you can fix it. And then the code is not efficient. Can you improve its efficiency by using functions? And finally, part 4, improve the code so that all the scores are stored for each player, so that the program can tell the user their top score, their last 3 scores, and their average score. A program accepts a user ID. This is the program that we're looking at, and checks to see if there's a list of players. If not, it's appended to the list with a score of 0. Remember, we're using lists and not arrays. The user plays the game and is assigned a random score between 50 and 200. The program checks if it is greater than the score held, so if it's like a top score, and if so, it replaces it as that player's top score. The user ID and score are then printed out. Here is my logical error. The logical error was a dot lower.